Joining us tonight is the Republican Senator for Kentucky, Dr. Rand Paul. He's the chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee and was the only Republican to vote no on the continuing resolution. Senator Paul, thanks for joining Top Story tonight. Like I said, you did not vote for this Republican spending bill. You have said it prolongs the Biden-era spending. Can you tell our viewers more about your decision and the government shutdown?
Whenever spending bills come before the Senate, I look at what is the bottom line. Will they add to the deficit or will they go towards balancing the budget? The Republican plan will add about $2 trillion to the deficit next year. The Democrat plan would add about $3 trillion to the deficit. So I think they're both going in the wrong direction. The other interesting thing about the Republican plan is it's a continuing resolution, meaning that it continues the spending levels that started in December of last year. So the irony is that every Democrat in the Senate voted for these spending levels in December of last year, and now every Democrat, other than about 2 or 3, are voting against the very same spending levels they voted for last year.
Why do you think they're doing that? Explain that to our viewers.
I'm not sure I can. It's not easily explained because the Republicans flip-flopped also. The Republicans in December of last year opposed it, I guess maybe for partisan reasons. Maybe both parties vote for partisan reasons, whereas I'm voting just because it's too much debt for the country. And I think other people vote because, hey, the Republicans want this, so I don't want it because I'm a Democrat, and vice versa. But I do think in the end the government shutdown will be short-lived, mainly because most of the Democrats have already voted for these spending levels previously. I think in the end what will happen is the White House will say, we'll negotiate with you over these Obamacare pandemic subsidies. And I think once there's an agreement that there'll be a negotiation, I quickly think the Democrats will go ahead and vote for the spending levels.
You know, you have for years proposed your own federal budget resolution. Are there any modifications to the existing CR that would get you to support it? I know you mentioned that $2 trillion in spending, but can you give our viewers some specifics here?
Yeah, it's $2 trillion in deficit, not in spending. The spending's like $7 trillion. The income is about $5 trillion, with the deficit being about $2 trillion. Yeah, I would probably, people say, oh, you won't compromise. I'll compromise, but it needs to be going in the right direction, not up. It needs to be going down. So if the deficit this year is $2 trillion, and you told me, well, what if we only had $1 trillion next year? I'd have a discussion about that because it would be less deficit next year than this year. But we're going worse. You know, the deficit's getting worse every year. Now the interest payment's $1 trillion. So I just can't vote to keep expanding the debt. I think there's going to be a day of reckoning. It's coming shortly. It's coming shortly for Medicare. It's coming shortly for Social Security. All of them are coming to a point where we're not going to have enough money to send the checks out.
Senator, you believe in cuts. You believe in smaller government. President Trump started his second administration with this promise of DOGE. Is the president delivering that? Or does he want government to stay the same size?
I think DOGE did a good job at finding waste, particularly waste in foreign aid and in some of the duplicative processes in government. But they were also confined in that the president ran on a platform that he would not look at the entitlements. If your cuts do not apply to all government and you take Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, Medicaid off the table, there aren't enough areas of government to actually reduce spending to ever balance your budget. So I think he does want to balance the budget. He's done more to go after certain agencies like the Department of Education than any president in my lifetime, and I compliment that. But I think they've taken too many things off the table. Yeah. And so in the end, the budget still looks as bad as it did under the Democrats.
But Senator Paul, let's talk reality here, right? In this era of viral politics, if you will, right, of social media, of where everything is a zero-sum game, sometimes that's the way it's covered over there in D.C. Can a senator vote to cut some of those entitlements and for it not to be political suicide?
Well, I've been saying for years I don't want to cut the entitlements, but I do want to reform them so they can continue. So, for example, I put forward the vote that we should raise the age of Social Security. And people say, oh, my goodness, do you hate old people? I'd say, no, I aspire to be an old person someday. I want Social Security to be there for me and for my family. But it won't be if we leave it the same. Because we're living longer, we will have to gradually raise the age. But when I put it forward, I only got 3 votes. So there's a long way till it's acceptable. But if someone doesn't start saying what we need to do, what happens in 2034 if nobody's willing to make these difficult decisions?
Thousands of federal workers, if not more, live in Kentucky. Are you worried about them during this government shutdown and also the impact as well on national security?
Well, I learned early on that everybody gets paid. They don't get paid at first, so there will be some interrupted paychecks, and sure, that will be a disruption. But the interesting thing is even if you're declared unessential and you don't have to come to work, like 95% of the IRS during one of the shutdowns was declared unessential. Everybody gets back pay. So let's say this lasts 3 weeks and there's a lot of missed paychecks. They'll all get back pay and they don't have to come to work. So a shutdown doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, especially if you live paycheck to paycheck like so many families do. You were one of the few, I'm going to switch gears here, Senator, while I have you. You were one of the few in your party that were particularly critical of FCC branding cars weighing in on ABC's suspension of Jimmy Kimmel. Are you still concerned that leaders in the Trump administration could take actions like suspending broadcast licenses that could limit free speech and directly contradict what's in the Constitution?
Yes, and I'll oppose that to my utmost possibility. The idea of the FCC regulating speech is a bad idea, but not a new one. You know, if you remember back in the 70s and 80s, we had this idea of, fair and balanced. We were going to have this both sidesism that had to be presented by the FCC, and that was eventually gotten rid of. And now we have much more freedom of the press than we had at one time. We also have many more venues. But I don't think the FCC should be threatening to take people's licenses away. I think that bad conduct, people who are vile and say terrible things about Charlie Kirk or his death, or think it's, somehow to be applauded, his assassination, they deserve to be shunned. They deserve to be not acceptable in polite society. And really, their bosses may have something to say to them, but the government should have no business in that.
If you could talk personally to Brandon Carr, maybe you have, what would you tell him about this point?
Read the First Amendment. It says Congress shall pass no law. Government should not be involved in policing speech. It's what we hated about the left under Biden. We should not do the same things that we disagreed with Biden doing.
Senator Paul, we thank you for your time tonight here on Top Story. We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.